Martin, let's talk, of course, about the revenue forecast, because you reported earnings earlier this month. Shares have been surging thanks to that forecast for revenue to increase as much as 60% during the final 5 years of this decade. Now, you said on the call that was thanks in part to a sales boost from zero-emission trucks and buses. What gives you the confidence that the transition to electric vehicles will prop up margins?
I mean, first of all, it props up revenues, because one thing I was always clear from years ago already is that electrical ZEV vehicles will be always more expensive than combustion engine vehicles. Combustion engines is the most efficient way to transport goods from A to B, but they emit CO2. And if you want to get rid of the CO2, it gets more expensive.
Well, Martin,
pretty easy equation.
At the same time, I mean, you take a look at the Europe, you take a look at the U.S., and you're really seeing EV demand for passenger vehicles fall off a cliff. You've had to see a lot of automakers really scale back their production plans. And we're talking about commercial vehicles, of course, different kettle of fish. But do those struggles give you any concerns about these plans?
No, because I like your expression, different kettle of fish. It's interesting. No, you buy a truck to move goods. You buy a truck to earn money with it. You never buy a truck out of fun, and you never buy a truck to impress your neighbor. And therefore, it's a pretty easy equation. If it's more efficient to move goods from A to B with an electric truck, then everyone buys one. If it's not, nobody would buy one. And everything else is then, so the price of CO2 is very important, and any type of regulation by the regulators.
Kettle of fish, I'll have to thank my mother for that term. She uses it all the time. But let's also talk about your margin projections as well, projecting a margin of as high as 10.5%. That's even as you see unit sales declining. Can you walk us through that math? Of course, margins healthy, sales declining. Does that come down to higher costs on your part?
No, first of all, we are in a cyclical business, and we had record years in 2022 and 23, and now I use the term normalizing. It's not a bad year, 2024. It's just the normal average amount of truck any society needs to keep it going. Anything you sell more in one year, you will sell less in another year. So a normal year is basically good. This is what the trucking industry is like. However, our revenue stays the same, and that comes certainly through pricing spillover effects from the previous years, but more importantly, it comes from extended service business, which we parallel expanded in the last years, and which is a huge source for significantly increased profits in the last couple of years.
All right, so a normalization there. I am curious for a little bit of color when it comes to input costs. When you're taking a look at raw materials right now, how do those costs compare to what we've been seeing over the past couple of years?
I mean, the raw material markets don't go as much up as we have seen it in the past, but it's a huge mix of bag for us. Especially important is aluminum and steel. Everything else is basically a wash. But on top of the raw material, what's far more important at the moment is the inflationary tendencies we see in a lot of the material we purchase from suppliers. So it's always the same discussion. Yes, raw material, it's a slight easing, but on the other side, there are inflationary costs on their side, on the wages, especially in the US, when I think of UAW new contracts, and that ultimately continues to put pressure on our material, which on the other side puts pressure on our pricing to our customers, and raw material is here not the decisive thing.
So a lot of different inputs there, of course, when it comes to raw materials. I do want to get some perspective on the competitive landscape, because you have Tesla CEO Elon Musk. He recently said that Tesla is considering building its electric semi-truck in its German plant. Of course, that is near Berlin. How do you view the competitive landscape? Of course, Tesla, it's aiming at producing a truck at roughly the same price as a diesel engine truck on your end. So how are you viewing that?
I would say there, first of all, two things wrong in that statement, and I respect Elon Musk, but number one, the truck he presented to the markets in the United States, unfortunately, is too long for Europe, so he needs to redesign that truck, and I haven't seen any design from Europe. Secondly, to sell a truck at the same price as a diesel truck, in my opinion, is even for Tesla a little bit a push. I haven't seen that in their pricing in the United States. He wants to sell in the United States since years tons of electric trucks, and he hasn't done it. In fact, we outsold him, I would say, a factor 15 to 1 in California in 2023. So I welcome competition, and I'm looking forward to see him in Europe.
Well, I appreciate those clarifications, Martin. And I mean, putting it all together, it sounds like you're pretty confident in your position here on the global scale.
Yes, I mean, look, we built 530,000 trucks, and we are growing. I think no problem for us to build 550,000, 560,000. That gives us a certain amount of scale, and the trucking industry is a highly diverse industry. You can't win the war with just one truck. You need hundreds of different types of trucks, all coming out of the same tool set. And that is what the big players in the market, and you had them initially on your chart with Volvo and Traton and PACCAR and us. That is what we all can do out of the same tool set, build out hundreds of different variants of trucks. And that is very difficult to replicate. And then comes the question of service network, which you then need coast to coast in the US through all countries in Europe. That's a high hurdle as well. So I never would say this is impossible, but it's a very, very huge undertaking.
Well, Martin, when you look across the competitive landscape, of course, with those factors that you mentioned, would you expect to see any consolidation, any M&A when it comes to the trucking industry, perhaps led, of course, by Daimler?
No, definitely. We are consolidated, I would say, in our industry enough. We have 4 global players who are in all big fields of the world. We as Daimler, we are in every country of the world where you are allowed to do business. We are even in Antarctica with a couple of expedition trucks. And therefore, we have, we covered the world. We cover every single segment. I would say if we grow out of our own strengths.